Hello and welcome to Written Words. I'm Helen, and in this video, our very first lesson, we're going to look at how to make a good start to a piece of writing. So we're going to look at three things in particular. First of all, what makes an opening sentence good? Then how does Charles Dickens, in the extract we're going to read, how does he extend that impact for the whole of the first page? And then we're going to explore why these techniques are just as important in fiction as non-fiction. So the opening sentence is the first part of a book or an article or any piece of writing that people will read. So if you want them to carry on reading beyond the first sentence, that first sentence needs to reach out and grab the reader's attention. So often that might mean using something short and punchy. And a good example of that is in A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. The first sentence in here reads, "Marley was dead, to begin with." It's very short. It doesn't say very much at all. It just tells us that Marley was dead. So if we want to know any more, we've got to read on and find out. On the other hand, we have Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. And the first sentence in this book, which I remember having to learn by heart when I was at school, is not short at all. It goes like this. "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife." Here, the opening sentence is designed to shock. Is it really a universally acknowledged truth that a single man who's got a lot of money wants a wife? It's not true at all. The author is trying to shock the reader into reading on and finding out more. Why is she saying this? Why is she making such an outrageous statement? So you want to read on to find out exactly what is going on here. And then another technique is used by Stephen King in It. In this case, he's giving us a puzzle to solve. The terror, which would not end for another 28 years if it did end, began, so far as I know or can tell, with a boat made from a sheet of newspaper floating down a gutter swollen with rain. But what could possibly be terrifying about a paper boat? We know that Stephen King writes scary books. Very scary books, in my opinion. But there's nothing scary about a little paper boat sailing along in the rain. So we're automatically asking ourselves, what's going to happen next? Why is this terrifying? So you have to read on to find out exactly what this paper boat has got to do with anything scary. In The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, we're told this in the opening sentence. 19 years before she decided to die, Nora Seed sat in the warmth of the small library at Hazeldene School in the town of Bedford. She's in a warm, cosy library. Nora Seed. We don't know anything about Nora Seed yet. We don't know who she is, but we know she's in a warm, cosy library and that she's decided to die. Why does sitting in a warm, cosy library have anything to do with deciding to die? And who decides to die anyway? So again, we're intrigued. We want to know what happens next. We have to read on if we want to answer those questions. These are examples of opening sentences in fiction, but intriguing, enticing, jaw-dropping openings don't only belong in fiction. Any piece of writing needs readers, and readers have to be won over if you want them to carry on reading beyond the first line. Newspaper headline writers, for example, are experts in this, as is as are the writers of internet clickbait. It's the quintessential, most extreme example of that technique. Girl opens box and you'll never believe what the contents are. You have to click on it because you want to find out what's in the box that the girl's opened, even though you don't know who the girl is and what the box looks like. It's drawing you in. It's a technique used to draw you in and make you click on something. So, looking at a piece of non-fiction, the opening line to A Short History of Nearly Everything, which is a layperson's guide to science, a very light-hearted guide to science by Bill Bryson. The opening sentence says, "No matter how hard you try, you will never be able to grasp just how tiny, how spatially unassuming is a proton." It's a challenge. It's daring the reader to try to understand what cannot be understood, to fathom the unfathomable. And who doesn't love a good challenge? So even in the first sentence, we're rolling up our sleeves, ready to read on with the rest of the book to find out how we can understand what cannot be understood. So whatever you're writing, you need to earn the reader's trust, and you need to do it in the first sentence. If your opening sentence impresses the reader, they'll want to read on. They'll want to stick with you and find out what else you have to say. Obviously, the rest of it has to be good as well, but if you don't get it right in the opening sentence, they may well not bother. So you want to grab your reader from the very first sentence by making that sentence something with impact that's going to keep the reader's attention. With that in mind, have a look at your favourite book and read the first sentence and see what is in there that makes you want to read on. What techniques is the author using to keep your attention and make you stick with the rest of the book? Next, we're going to take a closer look at A Christmas Carol. We're going to go beyond the first sentence and see how Dickens extends the impact from the first sentence throughout the whole of the first couple of paragraphs. Before we do that, we'll just look at a couple of words that are used in this extract. First of all, he uses the word mourner. A mourner is a person who is at a funeral, who is mourning or grieving for the deceased person, usually a friend or a relative of the deceased person. And he also uses ironmongery. Ironmongery is what you can buy in an ironmonger's shop. And there is a lot of talk in this extract about ironmongery in terms of nails. He talks about door nails, coffin nails. Nails you can buy in an ironmonger's shop, so they are ironmongery. He also uses the word unhallowed. Hallowed is a very old word. You may recognise it from the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Hallowed means holy. So unhallowed, as in this extract, means unholy, something that is not holy. And he also uses the word simile. A simile is a figure of speech that compares something to something else. And there is a very good example of a simile in this extract, which we will see shortly. So let's read on with our extract. Marley was dead, to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Mind, I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have been inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade, But the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and my unhallowed hands shall not disturb it, or the country's done for. You will therefore permit me to repeat emphatically that Marley was as dead as a doornail. Normally, it's good advice to avoid repetition when you're writing. But in this very short extract, Dickens uses the word dead 5 times, and he uses the word nail 4 times. He uses repetition a lot. Does this mean that Dickens is a bad writer? No, it doesn't, of course. Dickens is an expert in manipulating language to create the effect he wants. And what he's doing here is using repetition as a form of emphasis. And the words that he repeats are dead and nail. And there is almost a sense that each repetition of those words is like hammering a nail. Marley was dead to begin with. Marley was dead as a doornail. It's as if he's hammering the words into our minds to emphasise Marley is dead. He wants us to know that fact. Marley is not alive. He is dead. He's setting it up because the rest of the story depends on it. If we think Marley is dead, if we believe what he's telling us, then the rest of the story is going to be intriguing and exciting. But if there is any doubt in our minds that he might just be alive, then the impact of the story is lost. So he wants to emphasise Marley is dead. Now let's take a look at the length of the sentences in the extract. The first sentence is very short. Marley was dead to begin with. Then it gets a teeny bit longer. There is no doubt whatever about that. The next sentence gets longer still. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. The next sentence is also quite long. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. And then the last sentence in the paragraph is short again. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. So he starts with a short sentence, he ends with a short sentence, and he builds the length in the middle. So it's a perfectly crafted paragraph. And not only does it begin and end with a short sentence, but the short sentences are almost the same. Marley was dead to begin with. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. And there is the simile that we talked about earlier, comparing something to something else. Marley was as dead as a doornail. A doornail is a nail in a door. It's not alive, so therefore it must be dead. It's a very common expression in English, as dead as a doornail. But then, although this is, in theory, quite a sad opening paragraph, because we're talking about somebody who's dead, we're talking about mourners and burial and undertakers, and yet Dickens manages to put humour into it. So how does he add humour into it? The humour comes in the next paragraph. The humour comes in the completely irrelevant discussion about nails. He uses the expression, Marley was as dead as a doornail. And then he starts thinking about why a doornail? Why do we say dead as a doornail? Surely a coffin nail would be more appropriate for talking about somebody who is dead. It's completely irrelevant. Mind, I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have been inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade. And so on. He exaggerates. He talks about the deadest piece of ironmongery. If something is dead, it's dead. Something can't be more dead than something else. So there's no point calling something deadest. But he does it for the emphasis. He does it for the exaggeration, for the humour. He also exaggerates when he's talking about his unhallowed hands shall not disturb the wisdom of our ancestors, or the country's done for. So if he changes the phrase, it's going to ruin the whole country. It's exaggeration. So we can see from that extract how Dickens has extended the impact of his first short, punchy sentence throughout the whole of the next 2 paragraphs. He manipulates the language to keep you interested. He uses emphasis. He uses humour to keep the reader reading on so that you want to find out what happens next. Now it's time for you to have a go. So the writing prompt for this lesson is, bearing in mind all the things we've discussed about how to open a piece of writing, write the opening paragraph of a guide to the place where you live. It can be factual or fictitious or humorous, whatever you like, but aim to grab the reader's attention by surprising, challenging, intriguing, shocking, puzzling, any of the techniques that we've looked at in this lesson. Do download the worksheet for this lesson, which includes the points we've discussed, as well as the extract we read, some questions to get you thinking, the writing prompt, and a couple of ideas for some further reading. Thank you very much for joining me in this lesson. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, and in the meantime, happy writing.